Welcome to Nerdy and Flirty, a podcast designed to help you create a life that you love. It's nerdy with science-backed information, and it's flirty. It's fun, it's quick, it's straight to the point. My name is Cass, and get your notebooks out because this one you're going to want to take notes for. Happy quarter two. We are 3 months into 2024, basically, which means it's time to reflect on those New Year's goals that we set 3 months ago. Today, we are going to go step by step into my planning routine to be the most effective where you can actually see progress on your goals. We are going all the way from quarterly, down to monthly, down to weekly, down to daily things to stay on track and keep you in progress with your goals. In an article that I was reading, they said that most people understand that goal setting is very important to improve your life. But shockingly, 80% of people never actually set goals for themselves. And even out of the 20% that do set goals for themselves, 70% of those people fail to achieve the goals that they initially set. This is not going to be us. None of the people listening to this podcast fall into that category, and I'm going to tell you why. There are specific things that you can do every single quarter, every single month, every single week, and every single day to ensure that you are staying on track with your goals and actually seeing progress with your goals. We all know someone, and maybe this someone is you, that sets all these goals and says they're going to do all these things, but never actually does anything to move the needle on those goals and actually see progress. Today is the day that ends. We're done doing that. So I'm going to take you through every single step, the foolproof plan to actually see progress with your goals. If you do all of these steps, you will absolutely see some sort of progress with whatever goal that you want to achieve. This framework can be applied to any goal, whether it's career, whether it's fitness, whether it's social life, whatever it is, this can be applied to that. But we have to make sure we're setting goals and following through with them the right way. First things first is our good old friend, reflection. One of my most popular podcast episodes still to this day is one of the first ones I ever did, which was my November monthly reset routine. And in that, I talked about the reflection questions I asked myself from the previous month, and then the clarity questions I asked myself for the upcoming month. This still applies here, whether it's for your quarterly goals or your monthly goals. Having some reflection points throughout the year is really crucial to see where you're at and have a check-in with yourself. Sometimes our goals that we set in the beginning of the year or we set 3 months ago just don't align with us anymore, and that is totally okay. This is the time to make any adjustments, to make a pivot, to change your goals. But if you're not aware that the goals aren't truly aligned with you, then you won't know that and you'll end up feeling unmotivated. You'll feel guilty that you're not making progress. You'll feel disappointed with yourself. You'll feel unworthy because you're not doing enough. And then it just leads you into this downward spiral of disappointment where you don't want to make progress at all because you feel like you're not achieving these goals that don't even align with you anymore. This is what we want to avoid, because if you're not aligned with the goals, then you shouldn't feel bad for not achieving them, but you're not going to know what you're aligned with if you don't regularly reflect and check in with yourself. Take some time. It doesn't have to be super drawn out. It doesn't have to be a super long thing, but spend 5 to 10 minutes really reflecting with yourself and seeing where you're at. Reflect on your previous month. Reflect on your upcoming month. Reflect on the previous quarter. What have you been doing? How do you feel about it? What were some wins? What were some losses? Like, really get in depth with yourself. If you're curious about what to ask yourself, go listen to the episode, the November monthly reset routine. That's where I go into my whole routine that I just recycle for every single month. All the questions are in that episode. But the main thing is getting clear with yourself and understanding what went right, what went wrong, and how can we adjust for the future. For this to work, you really have to be real with yourself on what's happening in your life. If you are missing the mark on your goals, you have to figure out the real why. Is the real why that you're struggling to say no to things that are getting in the way? Is the real why that you're self-sabotaging your own goals? Are you afraid to fail, or are you afraid to succeed? Do you feel unworthy of that end result that you want? So instead of getting there, you'd just rather self-sabotage? Are you plagued by perfectionism? Are you so focused on being perfect that you end up doing nothing at all? Are you struggling just to get started? Really get deep with yourself. No one has to know the answers to these questions. No one has to know where you're at. But if you don't know where you're at, it's really hard to get where you want to be. In order to overcome these questions that we all have, we have to know which ones are true for us. You have to know that you're self-sabotaging to stop self-sabotaging. You have to know that you're plagued by perfectionism to get unplagued by perfectionism. You don't have to be perfect to see progress. In fact, the people that see the most progress are the people that don't care about being perfect. They're the people that just execute and fix it later. Execute and refine whatever you're doing later. For example, with this podcast, I've said this before, I wanted to start this podcast like 3 years before I actually started it. And I was so plagued by perfectionism. I kept telling myself, well, it's not perfect. I don't have this. I don't have that. Instead of executing, I spent those 3 years wishing and wishing and wishing and not feeling good enough. And then one day I ripped off the Band-Aid and said, I'm just going to put something out there just to put something out there. I was so impulsive with it, and now here we are almost 6 months later. Whatever goal you have, just get started. If you're focused on doing it all and doing it all perfectly, you're going to let yourself down every single time. So the first step is spending time to reflect, figuring out what went well, do more of that, figure out what went wrong, do less of that, and then we can move forward. Once we reflect on where we're at and once we know where we're at, then we can set really clear objectives for the goals that we have. How can you possibly achieve something if you don't even know what you want to achieve? If your objective right now is to just be successful, you have to know what success means to you. We have to set clear objectives all the way from like 1 year or a quarterly goal, all the way broken down by month, by day, by week. You have to break down each big objective into a daily or weekly habit that you can slowly build on to move the needle to where you want to be. Of course, you can say in a year, I want to be X, Y, and Z different. But the truth is, our years are made up of 365 days, and that's where the magic happens. For example, if your umbrella goal is that you want to lose 10 pounds, how can you adapt that goal to fit into your weekly and daily routines? Maybe you break it down by saying, I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week for 45 minutes every single week. That gives you a direct action that you can contribute to and have control over every single week. Going along with that, maybe you also say, I only want to go out to eat 1 to 2 times per week. And then every other day, I want to eat 3 meals at home. Maybe you're struggling to eat consistently. Maybe you're struggling to make things at home. So you set a goal for yourself that I'm going to eat 3 meals at home. That is a way, an example of a way to break that umbrella goal down into daily and weekly habits, because it's one thing to just say, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to lose 10 pounds. And it's another thing to actually have actionable things that you can do every single day to truly move the needle on where you want to be. When you break the goals down, break them down into things that you can control. You might not be able to control the number on the scale, but you can control how many times you go to the gym, how many meals you make at home. Those are things that you actually have full control over. As a trainer, I hear it all the time that people want to lose weight. I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, or I want to gain muscle, whatever the fitness goal is. That's always the goal, is something big, something umbrella with no real clarity on what it is. That's hard to achieve without a distinct action to match that. In order to effectively stick to those weekly and daily habits, you have to know where your time is going. And that brings me to my next point, which is time blocking. At the beginning of every single week, I schedule out pockets of my time for the goals that I have. I'll go onto my Google Calendar and I'll put an hour workout here, 2 hours of podcast recording here, 2 hours of editing, another workout here, whatever amount of time I need for the goals I have. I like to keep it really flexible, but I'll still make sure that I plan it into my calendar around my non-negotiables like work, appointments, that kind of stuff. And then I add in my goals before any other plans come up. I add in my wellness things, my podcast things, whatever things I'm actively trying to work on, I put this in. It's really hard to achieve your goals if you're not dedicating time to actually work on them. I'll typically do this on Sundays, but I keep it very flexible. At the top of the week, I'll put in my workouts, I'll put in my podcast, I'll put in whatever. But throughout the week, if I need to move it, I can move it. The only rule that I have for myself is that if I put something in, I don't take it out. For example, if you plan that you want to go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but something pops up on Wednesday, don't just delete it and say, well, I'm not going. Move it to Thursday. If I have time to move it around, I will, but I will not remove whatever goal I set. My mentality on this is that if I had a doctor's appointment or a commitment to a friend or a meeting or anything like that, I would never even think to cancel it. So why am I going to cancel an appointment with myself, a commitment to myself? Treat your goals and your objectives with yourself like any other commitment to anyone else. Once it's in the calendar, it's in the calendar. Of course, there are times where this doesn't happen 100% perfectly because emergencies happen, things come up, but canceling on yourself cannot be the default. It's so easy to put everyone else's things and everyone else's needs before your own goals. I do this too, where I'll be like, oh, well, I don't have to record the podcast because I can do that anytime, but then it doesn't end up happening. You have to treat your own commitments and your own goals like any other meeting, like any other priority. That's my weekly breakdown. Then at the beginning of every day, I do a daily breakdown on my calendar. I'll fill in any opening times that I have left based on what I need to do, what comes up, how I feel, that kind of stuff. So each morning I'll go through and I'll put in errands I need to run, chores I need to do, all that extra stuff that kind of gets in the way of the goals. I put that in after I put time in for my goals. This is really important because a lot of us will procrastinate by doing other productive things. For example, telling yourself you need to deep clean the house and then you'll record your podcast. Telling yourself you need to do all the laundry and then you can go to the gym. I was this way for a while because it is productive to clean the house. It is productive to do all of the laundry. And it temporarily makes you feel really good for getting things done. But over time, that's just another form of procrastination. You're using all of your energy to do these minute tasks that don't actually move the needle on what you want to accomplish. This is why I put these things in after I already planned out time for my goals. My goals come first, my chores come second. My chores always get done. So far we've talked about reflection, which is the first step, setting clear objectives, which is the second step, breaking them down into weekly and daily objectives, and finding time for those weekly and daily objectives. So that brings us to the last thing, which is tracking our progress. Find a metric that you can use each month to track how you actually did with real data. Our minds play all kinds of tricks on us and tell us you're not doing enough, you didn't do this well enough, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you should do more of this, you should do more of this. And we get lost in all of those thoughts that we miss out on some of the progress we've already made. You might have made progress with yourself and not even realized because you didn't track anything. It's important to find a metric that you can easily track because your thoughts will lie to you, but the numbers won't. For example, let's keep the fitness goal. If your goal is to start working out more, keep track of how many workouts you do over the course of a month. You can keep tallies, you can use your Apple Watch, you can make a whiteboard. It doesn't matter how you track it, but write it down somewhere so that you can look at it now and actually see your progress later. Having a metric will reduce the feelings of shame, the feelings of guilt that you feel of not doing enough, because you'll be able to actually look at the numbers and see how much you're actually doing. In the moment, it might not feel like you're doing enough, but when you look at the numbers, you'll be able to see, oh, last month I only worked out 10 times and this month I did 13. This will also keep your motivation higher because you actually can see some growth. Whatever metric you're trying to track though, make sure it's a metric that you have full control over. For example, if it's a fitness goal, you can't control the number on the scale, but you can control how many workouts you do. You can't control the number on the scale, but you can control how many times you cook at home. If your goal is to start a podcast, you can't control how many listeners you get, but you can control how many episodes you post or how many times you post on social media. The key to this whole metric thing is choosing metrics that actually make sense. If your goal is to start saving money, rather than just blindly saying, I want to save more money, start tracking your expenses. See where your money is going. See what categories you spend the most money in, and then you can adjust for the next time. Let's say you look back at the end of the month and you see that you did have a decline, whether you didn't work out as much or you didn't save as much money, you spent more than normal. You'll actually be able to look at the metrics to see why those things happened rather than just feeling bad about yourself. We want to avoid that self-pity as much as possible because that doesn't help you get anywhere. It just makes you feel bad about yourself. It leads to an all or nothing mindset, which we all know always leads to just the nothing mindset. So we want to avoid this as much as possible. Pick metrics that you have complete control over. If you're trying to improve your sleep routine, pick metrics like how many nights a week you went on your phone versus not going on your phone. How many nights a week you went to bed at a specific time. I love a good metric, but I love metrics that make sense. Don't feel like you need to overdo it by tracking every single thing that you do every single day, every single little tiny thing. Pick a couple things that you're really trying to work on them for an extended period of time, and then add something else in. A lot of us also get really caught up in adding a bunch of things at once, and then we end up doing nothing at all. Avoid this at all costs. Pick 2 or 3 things that you really want to work on, maybe one wellness, one career, one personal development, and then stick to those 3 things. Once you see that you have those down pat, add a new one in. Maybe your goal right now is just making a schedule every day. That in itself, if you're not used to doing that, is a new habit. Don't overwhelm yourself and feel like you need to do a million things all at once. Pick a few things that you can stick to them, and then add some more in. Let's do a quick recap. So in order to effectively plan, first, we have to reflect and understand where we're at. You can't plan if you don't know what you need to plan for. Reflect on your wins, reflect on your losses, and then you can make a strategic plan that actually aligns with where you're at in life. From there, we can set clear objectives and break them down to weekly and daily actionable things that you can do that align with the objectives. I like to do this through time blocking, being aware of where your time is going, setting key priority times for your goals, and then put everything else in around that. Remember, once it's on the calendar, it's on the calendar. If you have time to move it around, you can, but we're not deleting time for our goals. We have to set time aside for our goals and for our priorities to actually move the needle. And then from there, we can track our metrics and track our progress. Don't track too many things. Pick a few things that you want to track and keep it simple. And then the last thing on that is regularly checking in with those metrics. It's one thing to make metrics. It's another thing to actually look at them and compare them and contrast them and use them to do our next month. So after this month, it doesn't stop here. We're gonna track our metrics, we're gonna do our goals, we're gonna be aligned with them. And then next month we do it all again and we use what we learned about ourselves from this one into the next one and keep moving from there. Happy planning. Let me know what you thought on the podcast Instagram at Nerdy and Flirty Pod. Give it a follow, share it with a friend, and give us 5 stars and nothing less. I hope you have a fantastic week. I'm getting my ACL surgery on Friday when you're listening to this, so this upcoming week. Wish me luck. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you next week. Happy planning. Bye.